Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brever, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and today we have to start with some disappointing news. Last night, Logan was supposed to delight the entire world and a live audience in downtown Phoenix with what some are calling the best 5 minutes of stand-up known to man, written by yours truly, just a cringe-inducing masterpiece. And unfortunately, the open mic was actually not last night. Joe Bot Coffee, update your flyers. So we're hoping for next week. Sorry to all of you guys who got excited. I was among them. And frankly, it ruined my night that I didn't get to watch that. But we move, Logan. We progress. You looked all dapper in your suit. I'm sorry that you didn't get to do that last night.
I am very excited to do my performance, and I will keep you guys posted. So if you are interested, we will post it on all socials after the fact, but we will have a TikTok live. It will be in person, and I anticipate it will be at JoeBot. My understanding of the situation right now is that they're doing it either the first or the last Thursday of every month. So I will coordinate with them, and we will keep you guys updated at Nerd Sesh on TikTok if you guys are interested, and we will keep you posted there. It is coming. I'm not quitting on you guys, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, let's face it. They're massive amateurs over at Joe Bot Coffee. This is amateur hour, and they would be so lucky to keep your business and still get to witness that performance live. But let's be honest, they probably will, because it's the easiest place for you to go. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit of football, Logan, because here we are at championship weekend, and we have clashing in the AFC this weekend both of our Super Bowl picks from before the playoffs started. For me, the Baltimore Ravens. For you, the Kansas City Chiefs. What's the first big key that stands out to you for this game, Logan?
The first big key is how the Kansas City Chiefs are going to slow down Lamar Jackson to me. There's been one team that repeatedly has been able to give Lamar Jackson fits, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Here we go.
I think the Chiefs are very well equipped to slow down Lamar Jackson with the way they play their defense. The Chiefs and Spag, much like the Baltimore Ravens, and this is an interesting dynamic, great at disguising their coverages at pre-snap. You know what I mean? They're lining up guys in different parts of the field. They're switching the safeties. They give the quarterback a lot of different looks, because if you're a quarterback, you're sitting behind the line of scrimmage, the first thing you're doing is diagnosing the defensive backs. You're figuring out, are they in a cover 4, a cover 3, how many safeties are dropping. That's where you're going to start. And the Steelers have been able to consistently stifle Lamar Jackson for a few reasons. One, they get great push up the middle. Cam Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi stuff the run. This is a Ravens team that was the best rushing attack in all of football, and this is a Chiefs defense that I believe has allowed over 5 rushing yards per attempt this season. That has been the Chiefs.
I don't think it's that high, but they're 24th in rushing yards allowed per attempt.
It's their, for lack of a better term, it's their chief weakness on their defense. That's where it's going to start. The Chiefs have to slow down Lamar. They have to stuff the run at the beginning at the point of attack. I would always dedicate one linebacker. I mean this. Every single play, I'm dedicating one linebacker to Lamar Jackson. Your job is to stay with him, to keep your eyes on him, to follow the ball, to follow him. And it's a tough task because, again, this is the best rushing attack in all of football. The Chiefs need to slow that down. But I think they have the personnel to do it. 2 legitimately all-pro first-team caliber cornerbacks on this roster, defensive backs, in McDuffie, in L'Jarius Sneed. But that's where it starts, is beating Lamar Jackson on that side of the football. And I think that the way I see this game coming down, Carson, we'll get to big predictions in the end. I think this football game is going to come down to a Lamar Jackson late fumble, and I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win off of that. I think the Ravens are going to have a chance to either take the lead or to tie it up late on their final drive, and I think Lamar is going to have a costly fumble that sinks his boat. But that's where it starts. Obviously, slowing down Lamar Jackson, disguising the coverages, and slowing down the Baltimore Ravens rushing attack.
You are still betting on Loaf of Bread Lamar, as you used to call him.
Loaf of Bread Lamar, baby. Loaf of Bread Lamar.
I actually do not like how the Chiefs match up in this arena, and we can start with what you talked about. The Ravens have been by far the most dominant rushing attack in football by 15 yards per game and the 3rd most efficient on the ground. And the Chiefs have been in the bottom quarter of the league in terms of their efficiency as a rushing defense. And to me, it's not a question of Spags, who I think is consistently a great defensive play caller. It's a question of personnel. Chris Jones up the middle is awesome. that other DT spot with Noddy can be a weakness. And the linebackers here aren't great. And so I think that you can run on the Kansas City Chiefs. The Ravens can run on just about anybody. We just saw it last week. They shredded the Texans on the ground, gave them 229 yards. And the Chiefs, against the Bills, battened down the hatches in the second half on those between the tackles runs. They started getting good push up front. They were forcing James Cook to sort of bounce around behind the line of scrimmage, and they blew some of those plays up as the game went along. But in the first half, the Bills were running the ball on them at will with a lot of success. And the one thing that the Chiefs couldn't ever really figure out, couldn't ever put a stop to, was Josh Allen as a scrambler. He was very successful in that matchup last week. He has consistently been very successful as a rusher against the Chiefs. He averages like over 55 yards per game on the ground in those matchups. And Lamar is never more willing to use his legs than in the playoffs. We have seen him this year grow so much as a passer, become more willing to protect his body as a rusher, not necessarily try to make that last dude miss, slide, pick up 10 yards instead of trying to force it for 15 and maybe getting banged up. But come playoff time, the guy has averaged 93 rushing yards per game in his career. So to me, it is that combination of a great line, good running back play. I do believe that they can physically pound the run game between the tackles, but I also think the out of structure Lamar scrambling stuff is just so special. I don't think there's an answer for it. I don't think this Chiefs defense has shown itself to be particularly strong against the run. So I actually like the Ravens' ability to dictate in the way that they want offensively.
Yeah, and I think the Ravens are going to have long, methodical drives like they've had in every single game. Again, we've mentioned this throughout the year. I mean, Baltimore, the reason that they're the Super Bowl favorite and that this week leading up to this football game, you hear everybody hopping on the Ravens bandwagon is because they've dictated and controlled every single football game they have played in this year. And so it is going to take a Kansas City Chiefs defense going above and beyond to slow down this attack, to make those turnover-worthy plays. Like, that to me is the only way that Baltimore loses this game, is timely stops and turnovers. Again, blanket statements. I love talking football because you can make them for almost every game, but it is going to take Lamar getting that turnover, throwing an interception. If the Chiefs don't, it's going to be really hard. And I mean, this is on the other side of this, Carson, arguably the best defense that Patrick Mahomes is going to face all year. I give a ton of credit to the Kansas City Chiefs defense for how they disguise things pre-snap before the play starts. There's nobody in football that does that better than Mike McDonald in this Baltimore Ravens defense. And so when you couple a great scheme with legitimately deeper than 11 Pro Bowl caliber players, like I put 100% credence on what Roquan Smith said. He may be an all-pro quarterback. We are an all-pro defense. Yeah. He is exactly right. This entire defense is stacked. And so on the other side of the football, there's probably nobody more well-equipped to battle against Patrick Mahomes than this Ravens defense. It is, to me, the most interesting dynamic of this football game, Carson. And I don't know. The ending point to me is, I mean, these teams feel so evenly balanced, so, they feel like the two best teams in football to me.
Yeah.
It comes down to the quarterback position, and I just wouldn't bet against Patrick Mahomes. I hate beating the drum. I hate beating the dead horse, but that really is the thing that dictates and makes a difference for me. Carson, I know that Lamar has had a career year. I know that Lamar has been phenomenal, making plays out of structure, making big-time throws. He's never been on this stage before, and there's something, man. I think it's going to come down to a Lamar Jackson turnover, and it hurts me to say that because I love Lamar Jackson so much. I love him as a football player, as a leader, as a human being. I think that's what it comes down to, and I just trust Mahomes a little more to not make that crucial mistake.
Listen, I get putting your absolute faith in Patrick Mahomes, but where I would draw the line is you're talking about it feels like these are the two best teams in football. Sure. The only reason, though, it feels like the Chiefs are there is Patrick Mahomes. As an all-around football team, I don't think they've consistently shown themselves to be of that caliber. This defense is awesome. It's not as good as the Ravens defense, which legitimately is one of the most stacked across the board that I can think of in recent memory. I mean, just position group to position group, every single spot is ridiculous. The starters and the depth. They're incredible, and they consistently have been. And You mentioned something that is very true, how you can always point to a few cliche things before a football game and say, yeah, that's going to be what decides it. Turnover margin. Of course, turnover margin can swing any game. But nobody has been better at protecting the football and taking it away from the opposition than the Baltimore Ravens this year. Plus 14 turnover margin. You can talk about executing on 3rd and 4th down and finishing drives in the red zone, right? Getting your 7 instead of your 3. Across those 3 categories, the Ravens have been excellent offensively. They are top 10 in 3rd down, 4th down, and red zone efficiency, and they have been phenomenal defensively. I think they're top 5 in all of those categories. Whereas the Chiefs, at times, have left points on the board in red zone situations. They've been average in terms of red zone efficiency. So I'm viewing a team here that is more talented overall, that has been better in some of those key areas that can decide any game, that although both these defenses are really strong, has the more dominant unit there. The Chiefs just aren't stacked at every single position like this. I mentioned there's a couple spots on the defensive front that aren't so impressive. Chris Jones and Karlaftis can make up for a lot of that. The linebacking core is okay. It's not great. It's not the equivalent of having Matabuki up front and then Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen and all the studs they have in the secondary. Like, it's just ridiculous. The Ravens lead the league in sack rate with one of the lowest blitz percentages in football. They lead the league in takeaways. They're 3rd in yards per play allowed. They have the number 1 scoring defense. And although I think that Spags has consistently been a difference maker for this Chiefs defense in the playoffs, and that's why they've probably overperformed their talent level at times there and been a better playoff defense than regular season, Mike McDonald is the man. Yeah. And I don't think that it's like Spags is going to outduel him. I think they're both going to cook. So Mahomes will make some special plays. He will do some stuff running around behind the line of scrimmage for 7 seconds, and guys will be covered for 6, but then somebody just barely springs open enough and he'll make some crazy throw. But how much are those guys going to find space? Like, you think about the Bucs Super Bowl, which is like considered one of Mahomes' worst games statistically, but you think about all of the amazing plays that he made under duress into crazy tight windows, but the dudes around him didn't have enough space. They couldn't make those plays. And I'm not going to say that this game will be to that extent, but that's the formula. That's what we've seen. This is what we were talking about last week. To beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, you need big clutch defensive plays. The Bengals did it. The Bucs did it. I think the Ravens have as good a recipe there as anybody.
Definitely. I don't agree with the argument that you just laid out. The one thing that I'll say is just this is a different Patrick Mahomes. He's 13-3 in the playoffs. He's only ever lost to Joe Burrow and Tom Brady. And this is a different level of composure and preparedness. Mahomes has been here before. That's a legitimate difference maker between these two quarterbacks. I know that this is Mahomes', second road game ever in his playoff career, which is, guys, can we take, that is ridiculous. That is legitimately ridiculous that you have played an entire slate, an entire season of playoff games, and this is only your second ever on the road. First, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Joel Embiid numbers.
I hate it. I hate that my freaking Chiefs argument every time is a faith in Patrick Mahomes bet, and that is what I circle back to. There is two more arguments that I think you could make, Carson, for this Ravens team. One dynamic that we haven't touched on that is a crucial factor to this game. Mark Andrews is reportedly going to be back. That is a massive factor, and it scares the shit out of me. Considering that the Ravens' skill talent has performed so well this season in crazy circumstances. Again, this is a Ravens team that over the past couple years has been repeatedly beaten up, right? Anytime they get to the playoffs, it's like, man, they're not even in full health. This is the first remotely close to a healthy team. We always get on Nikola Jokic for what he didn't do with Austin Rivers and Monte Morris. That was the knock on him. We don't. The people, before Jokic climbed the mountain, love to point to that. And that is something that I think they knocked Lamar to, too, is that they never considered that aspect of it, is that, it's always Lamar crumbling in the playoffs. Well, his team is also really beat up. This is a first version of the Baltimore Ravens that have actually been healthy. And not only that, again, their skill position talent have gone above and beyond this season. Edwards, Hill, Keaton Mitchell before he got injured, right? Balled out in the running game. Receiving-wise, Odell hitting his stride. Zay Flowers doing his thing. You got freaking... what's that bum? Likely. Nelson, you got Nelson Aguilar out here catching tutties, man. Isaiah Likely going crazy in the absence. And then the pillar of this offense next to Lamar has been Mark Andrews, super consistent. I mean, that's a terrifying aspect of this, is that as a person betting on the Chiefs, This is the most healthy the Ravens have ever been. This is the best
Yeah.
defense that they've ever had, and their skill position talent has balled out every single game. And defensively, Carson, we haven't. I know that we've blanketed. I do want to zero in and just give the guys some name recognition because this is all pros. Matabuke, the pressure that he's been able to generate. Pierce stopping the run. Oweh, Jadeveon Clowney. It's ridiculous because, Carson, these guys are so talented that if you take, say you dedicate 2 linemen to Matabuke on this play. Oh, well, that frees up Jadeveon Clowney on the other side. I mean, they're just so star-studded. It allows everybody to have less attention on them. The Ravens are loaded, man. The Ravens are loaded. And they scare me more than any other team in this playoff field. And if Lamar Jackson gets it done, I'm going to be very happy for him. But I'm not betting against that boy, Pat.
I get it, dude. And that was basically my argument before the Super Bowl last year. It's like, yeah, I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to win this game because he's the best football player that I've ever seen. And that has overwhelmingly been correct. But I do think you bring up a good point with the Mark Andrews return because I do view whose weapons play better as a real key to this game. Huge
factor.
Because it's kind of been the limiting factor for the Chiefs all year. Those boneheaded, crazy, costly plays from the receivers, beyond the fact that these dudes just aren't that good and aren't separating that consistently, and Kelsey has regressed. Last week, you didn't really have any of those boneheaded plays in the passing game. You have the McCole Hardman fumble on the end around, but MVS actually played well. Made a really nice catch in that game. Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce were both good. But I do think the pendulum swings a little bit back in Baltimore's favor with Mark Andrews coming back, who, by the way, they had not missed a beat without. And they had actually had their best offensive performances without him and likely had played so well. And he has more of that downfield explosiveness. Maybe he's so good after the catch. He's so athletic. But I do think in a playoff environment against a really good defense, having a real number one kind of guy to attack that intermediate middle of the field matters in a matchup like this. I think about how much Mahomes has been able to lean on Travis Kelce over the years, just having that great possession guy, big target, tight end. It's incredibly valuable. And when I look at the totality of the group, with him, Zay Flowers, who has been so good this year, is awesome in space. When he's your number 2 target, then you feel better about that. OBJ didn't do a ton last week coming off of that injury, but had some real explosive performances earlier in the year. I assume likely is still going to get some burn just because he's been playing so well. I think it's probably the better collective group than the Chiefs. It's not necessarily a big difference, but I do slightly prefer them. And I do think you talk about feeling like Lamar is going to have a costly turnover in this game. Lamar's probably going to have to lead a clutch drive to win this football game. It's just what happens against the Kansas City Chiefs. Inevitably, you are almost never going to blow them out. That Bucs game is the one exception, but you're probably going to need to drive down the field no matter what. We saw it with Josh Allen last week. You get into field goal range, miss the field goal, but even the field goal probably wouldn't have been enough. You wanted 7 there. That's just the pressure that Patrick Mahomes puts on you with his consistent excellence. But I trust Lamar to do that. And in years past, maybe I wouldn't have. In years past, I would have said, yeah, this is a team that can really only win when they are fully asserting themselves. And against great teams in the playoffs, sometimes things go off schedule and you're playing from behind. And I don't think necessarily that in the past, Lamar had proven himself as that level of elite passer to where you trust him in a duel against a guy the caliber of Mahomes. This year, he has been consistently. This year, he has reliably won games with his arm talent, with his accuracy as a thrower, with his pocket poise, with his ability to keep his eyes downfield outside of structure. And he hasn't had to lead many clutch game-winning drives this year because the Ravens have been up in a whole lot of games. And in fact, they've still squandered a couple of close ones this year, which had kind of been their reputation in years past. But I just think Lamar is at that level. I think Lamar is having one of those special seasons right now. And considering that I think they have the better overall football team, I'm taking the Ravens 27-24, which I think is the exact same score that I picked the Bills by last week, and then the Chiefs actually won by that score. It's only that close to me because of the respect that I have for Patrick Mahomes, but I don't think he can explode on this defense. And that's another thing. Against the Bills, the Chiefs were able to move the ball downfield with a lot of chunk plays. A lot of it was, oh, wow, great 7-minute drive by the Bills, and oh, cool, the Chiefs have scored in 2.5 minutes. I just don't think you're doing that against the Ravens. It's a different ballgame. It's a different caliber defense, and they have that superhero quarterback and elite offense. So give me Baltimore. Very close, though.
I think this defense is leagues ahead of Buffalo. That being said, I think Patrick Mahomes can explode against anybody. I think he can dot up anybody.
All right, what's your score prediction?
31-20. I think it's going to be.
Whoa!
Here's
That's disrespect.
It's not. Here's my scenario. It's going to be 28-20, final drive. Lamar Jackson has to lead them down, get a 2-point conversion to tie it up. Fumbles on the final drive. Chiefs kick a field goal, go to the Super Bowl ball game. 31-20 Chiefs.
So do you think the Bills were the second best team in the AFC?
Yeah. Well, no, I think Josh Allen's the second best QB. I think the Ravens are the best team, but score to me doesn't really factor into that. I think the Ravens are still the best team, but like I said, the Chiefs have given us virtually nothing on paper to back this up. This is not a logic bet. This is a faith bet, and I believe in Patrick Mahomes. WHPM. Shout out Gabe. Shout out PTG.
That just surprises me, that score, because I would think if the Chiefs are going to win this game, it is going to be Mahomes' heroics just gets them over the top. He leads that clutch drive in the 2-minute drill. I think if a team is going to win by double digits, if a team is going to really dominate this game, it has to be the Ravens. They have the formula to dominate games.
Wow.
They're the ones who blow people out. The Chiefs haven't blown anybody out all year. The Ravens, when they're on, dude, I mean, this has been the case for years. They're just better right now than they've ever been. But when the Ravens are running the football down your throat, when that defense is at an elite level, if they can get a couple of those swing plays, takeaways, and as we've said, they protect the ball really well, like they can run away with games. They killed the Seahawks. They killed the Lions. Like they're capable of that in a way that I don't think the Chiefs are. And I don't think they're going to do that to the Chiefs. But if it were one team or the other, I would say the more stacked all-around football team over the best individual talent on the field.
What them Ravens do against them Steelers this year, though?
Dude, they played one time. And then they played without Lamar Jackson. You're not going to flex a win over Tyler Huntley, bro. I know that you have too much respect to do that. And guess what? The Steelers aren't going to be out on that field, okay? So whatever voodoo magic they summon to give Lamar fits, that doesn't transfer to the Chiefs just because you like both of them, all right? So we disagree on our predictions. Just zooming out a little bit with the stakes of this game, which quarterback do you think has more to gain from a win here, Logan?
For sure, Lamar. This isn't close to me. One, you join, like I mentioned earlier, the pantheon of quarterbacks that slayed the dragon. You beat Mahomes. That's a badge of honor. Burrow, Brady, Lamar. I mean, elite company. And then two, finally, Lamar can get, it is one of the biggest monkeys on the back of anybody in sports. I'm so glad he won a playoff game last week because it would have been, I cannot imagine the discourse if he had lost to the Houston Texans. It would have disgusted me. Lamar is now in the conference title game for the first time in his career. That is one monkey off his back. The other one is finally getting to the Super Bowl. The third one is getting over the hump and winning the Super Bowl. Shout out Steve Young when he did with his 6 TD performance against the Chargers. Obviously, I love that clip, winning a Super Bowl after Joe Montana.
Yeah.
That's to me, it's Lamar all the way. And it would dispel, I think, a lot of Lamar Jackson detractors. He's in the Super Bowl. What are you going to say now? That Lamar can't get there? Because if he can get there, he can damn sure win it. Lamar Jackson has everything to gain from this game. And Carson, I mean, some people are going to say Patrick Mahomes because to them, if Patrick Mahomes wins this game and then wins another Super Bowl, he's the greatest quarterback of all time. He's already the greatest quarterback I've already seen with my own eyes. I don't need to see any further proof. And, man, that just made me think of Mad Dog's. Did you see his quarterback list, man?
No, I don't think I want to. What
Carson,
was
it was hilarious. He had Patrick Mahomes and then, Bart Starr, Roger Staubach, Otto Graham.
Yeah.
It was basically Patrick Mahomes in the old folks' home.
What tier was that? Like, who was he
His top
behind?
10. It was his top 10. No, Mahomes was number 1, but then it was all the old heads.
I love that dude. Mad Dog is just on another planet. Mad Dog is living in 1986, and frankly, I'm astounded that he would have Mahomes number 1. I thought that you were going to say he was like 13 behind Norm Van Brocklin.
No, but it was so funny. There were Peyton Manning was number 9 on his list.
Insane.
Johnny Unitas was really high, and like big ups to Johnny U. Johnny U's the top 5 guy to me. But
yeah. Mad Dog isn't even as old as he thinks he is. I swear, Mad Dog thinks that he grew up watching Paul Arizin and George Mikan. Bob Cousy, it's like, what is he, 60? He's not 87 years old. That guy's hilarious. And I do see that case for Mahomes because, Logan, you say that Mahomes is the greatest quarterback that you've ever seen. Is he the best quarterback? Or is he the greatest? Because I think he's the best in terms of peak. But at the end of the day, stacking up a resume does matter. And winning a third Super Bowl in his 6th year as a starter for the second consecutive year when people have been like, hey, the Chiefs aren't going to have it this year. Like the 2 years that they have been most doubted. Then I think there are people who can actually look at him versus Brady and say, okay, it's not just that his peak is higher. I'm already good calling him the greatest. I don't know if he's there if they fall short this year, but it's ridiculous. If he wins the Super Bowl, he will already be third all-time in quarterback wins, Logan. He's 28 years old. 28 years old. He's already 9th in playoff yards. He's 6th in playoff touchdowns. Obviously, per game, he's lapping the field, and that's not just because of passing stats inflation in the modern era. That's because he's by far the best quarterback of this era as well, which is loaded with quarterback talent.
So, is your pick Mahomes? You think he has more to gain?
No, I think it's Lamar. Because at the end of the day, Mahomes is going to get the benefit of the doubt to the max. And for what it's worth, I don't think he's even going to do anything to merit the benefit of the doubt. It's more, he's not going to get crushed if they lose because everybody's going to know this isn't Mahomes' fault. Mahomes is the only reason that they were there in the first place. Whereas Lamar is still fighting those narratives, man. And I do think he was a different football player, right? Like he had sucked in the playoffs previous to this year for the most part, but he's a different guy. And football is a small sample size sport. It is a super small sample size sport in the postseason. And when a guy grows over a multiple year span and you don't see him in those environments or you don't see him with the supporting cast around him that he has now, then those narratives can just kind of stew and grow even as they may no longer be true. And I think that that is very much the case for Lamar. I also think he's fighting for an entire archetype of players. I think he is fighting for the real dual threats, not guys like Mahomes who can scramble at a high level, dudes who came into the league as run-first quarterbacks, dudes who are rushing for 1,000+ yards in a season. And I think that you are always going to need to be a legitimately good thrower of the football as well to win a Super Bowl, in my opinion, which Lamar very much is. But he's also a great rusher. And the threat that that poses on defenses is constant. It's unrelenting. And I think people have this idea that you can't win that way because there's only been so few guys who have been truly great running quarterbacks to begin with. And I don't think we've ever seen one who was as good an all-around passer as Lamar Jackson is right now. So for a bunch of reasons, I do think it's Lamar, but they both have a ton to gain.
Well, black quarterbacks have been fighting against that narrative since the beginning of football. Warren Moon had to go and win 5 championships in the CFL before he was even given a crack in the league. Before that, I mean, I think the next quarterback was Joe Gilliam, who was the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the late 60s and early 70s. And it's different, obviously, because you mentioned that archetype, but it's like people are still holding on to that because they watched Jalen Hurts lose in a Super Bowl. You know, Doug Williams was the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Dispelled that, that logic of thinking. But until we see a guy who is super dynamic, and I don't even know if you can consider Lamar run first anymore. And that's the interesting dynamic, too, is it's like you could still hold that sentiment that, Michael Vick was like that. He got to an NFC title game, lost to Donovan McNabb, didn't ever make it there. He was a run-first quarterback there. And then we see him grow into the elite passer in 2010. Randall Cunningham never got there as a run-first guy, and then he has a career year with the Vikings where they reached the NFC title game in the late 90s. And it's interesting to me that Lamar Jackson, as the run-first guy, never got there, but now that he has finally grown out and rounded out his palate. This is a long-winded way of saying that he has grown as a passer. You have to grow as a passer. You have to be an elite passer, like you said, to get the job done. But if Lamar gets it done, it will finally vindicate what we have known for so long and what I think progressive NFL fans have known is that these are the most dynamic guys on the planet, and there are very few guys that I'd rather have ahead of him. Again, Lamar, I'd only take 2 other quarterbacks ahead of him because he is that special. And I would love to finally see that narrative get dug, we dig the hole, and we finally bury it, man, because it's been time that we bury that.
It's the same thing that we've actually been talking about a few times in recent weeks, but every single year, 31 teams are going to fall short. And you can look at all those 31 teams and say, here's their fatal flaw. And when there's only been so many guys who are true volume dual threats, or who you could argue are run first quarterbacks, but who are also legitimately really good, then you can say, yeah, you'll never win like that. But I absolutely think there's an obvious racial element to this that you just can't
100%.
overlook. It is deeply baked into the history of football. We've seen it with Cam, got to a Super Bowl, was an elite passer that season on top of being one of the most dominant rushing forces that we've seen. But the narrative persists because a couple plays don't go their way, didn't win the Super Bowl. It's unfortunate, and I think that Lamar can do some real work to defeat that. And, of course, Mahomes has won the Super Bowl as a black quarterback, but there's also, colorism to it. Mahomes is biracial. Lamar's fully black. People perceive that differently in the quarterback position. There's just a deep, deep history there that I think it would be really cool for Lamar to overcome. And also, this could just be a really special season for him, Logan, because you know what we don't see guys do in the same year? MVP and Super Bowl.
No.
Mahomes did it last year. Before him, the last dude, do you remember who it was?
I believe Kurt Warner.
Kurt Warner in 1999, Logan. So that puts you in exclusive company. So this is a big, big game and big opportunity for both of their legacies. Do you feel like this is basically the Super Bowl, Logan?
Whoever wins this game, I will take to win the Super Bowl. For me, it's Mahomes. It's like you said about Lamar. In a hypothetical Super Bowl matchup between either of these two quarterbacks and whatever quarterback we get out of the NFC, if it's Purdy, if it's Goff, one of those guys is going to have to go above and beyond in that Super Bowl, in that game, to win them the football game. That's just the bottom line. It's every game. Jimmy Garoppolo had an opportunity to slay the dragon. He had Emmanuel Sanders on a seam, wide open, and he missed the throw. And that was his one opportunity.
Yeah.
There's going to be that opportunity, and you can't blink. You have to seize it. You got to seize the moment. And I just don't trust Goff or Purdy enough to seize the moment and go above and beyond, because that's what you're going to have to do in a matchup against these two teams. So, yes, I do think this is – honestly, I thought Bills Chiefs kind of felt like the Super Bowl to me. That's the best football game I've watched all year. But this does feel like the Super Bowl to me. How do you feel, though?
Well, Bills Chiefs was an amazing game, but to me it couldn't have felt like the Super Bowl because I know that somebody was going to have to go to Baltimore and win. And to me, that's the toughest thing to do in football this year. I don't want to diminish the NFC competition by saying that this is like the Super Bowl because anything can happen, right, in that single game format. And they're going to be playing a really good team no matter what. But are these, to me, the two best teams left in the field? Will I pick whoever wins this game to win the Super Bowl? Yes, in both cases. Before we move on, I do want to just give a brief shout out to the coaches in this game because I think this is a really awesome coaching matchup and probably the two best coaches in the league today. I think you have your offensive play calling geniuses, McDaniel, Shanahan, LaFleur. You have your all-around cultural guy, aggression pioneer, Dan Campbell. But these are the two who have climbed the mountain and who have been doing this shit for, in Andy Reid's case, 2 full decades and change. In Harbaugh's case, a decade and a half. And nobody has more consistently produced elite team results across different cores, different situations. So shout out to them. Do you think they're the two best coaches in football, Andy Reid and John Harbaugh?
They're on my short list, and I think you make a really good point about the scheming. The other guys, Dan Campbell is already up there for me. Shanahan is up there for me. McVay, LaFleur.
McVay, of course.
Mike Tomlin is up there for me, of course. Stefanski, all of those guys. But the difference maker to me is the scheme. When you think about the guys that have weaknesses too, and this isn't I want a great culture guy, but I also want a guy that is going to be able to scheme up brilliant things offensively and defensively. And that's where I think a guy like Mike Tomlin, for example, falls short. Great culture setter, great defensive mind, offensively can't pull his weight. Andy Reid and Harbaugh tick all your boxes. You know, McVay, great culture guy, great offensive mind, maybe can't do the same things defensively. I want a guy who's the total package, and I think there are no more total packages as a leader, as an offensive schemer, and a defensive schemer than Harbaugh and Andy Reid.
I agree, dude. Harbaugh, to me, is the best all-around guy when you consider special teams background, but was ahead of the curve with analytics and has consistently established a great defensive culture.
I love
3 phases.
I will give him that credit. The one thing that I will say is Harbaugh, and Harbaugh has done it in different scenarios, and he has built the Ravens back from when they were, really low, and they were winning 4 games before they got Lamar. The one thing I'll say, Harbaugh inherited a great culture and a great team from, I believe it was Brian. I want to say it was Brian Billick, or it might have been, I think it was Brian Billick.
It was Billick.
He inherited a great team. The thing that I'll give Andy Reid an immense amount of credit for is he took a Philadelphia Eagles team that was in the absolute dumps, and he took them to 5 NFC title games. And then he took a Kansas City Chiefs team that had won 2 games the year previous before he showed up, and he has built them into this. There has been nobody else, I think, in NFL history that has been able to take a organization in the dredges to top of the mountain the way Andy Reid has. And that's why I would give him the slight edge over Harbaugh. But ton of credit to both of these guys.
I agree. I think Andy Reid makes a case for best offensive mind, best play caller in NFL history.
He might be, and all credit
Bill Walsh.
I was going to say credit to some of the greats: Don Shula, George Halas, Tom Landry, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher. Andy Reid might be the second greatest coach in NFL history to me, behind Belichick. Man, I mean that.
Yeah, if he gets there again this year, you can't really overstate how impressive 5 straight NFC championships was, or 5 in 6 years. What was it with the Eagles? It was 5 in 6 years, I think. It's unbelievable, just the consistent offensive brilliance. So shout out to both of them. And of course, when we're talking about the totality of the body of work, Tomlin, Belichick have to be in that tier. Belichick isn't coaching a team right now, which we're going to talk about later. But these are 2 dudes who are still at the front. They are in the top tier today. They are still elite football coaches. And so I think that is a bit of a separator when we're just talking about our current rankings. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is bringing you an offer that'll help make the playoffs electrifying. New customers can bet $5 on any game and get $200 instantly in bonus bets.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code NERDS. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code NERDS. The crown is yours.
Let's talk about the other game, Logan. Niners-Lions. What is a big key that stands out to you for this one?
First of all, I want to toot my own horn and flex my muscle real quick.
Toot it.
I did predict both of these title games coming into the playoffs. I am very hype. Because of that, I'm going to stick to my original predictions for both of these games. I also predicted them Detroit Lions to get to the NFC title game preseason. I'm so pumped.
Talk your shit.
I'm so pumped about the Lions being here. This is a battle of the offensive titans, and that's the thing that I am looking forward to the most with this game is I think talent-wise, I think both of these teams match up really well on paper. They are strong in the trenches. They have got playmakers on offense. And defensively, obviously, I give the Niners the edge. I honestly don't think it's as close. Trench-wise, I would give the Lions very close. Linebacking-wise, I think it's slightly close.
Really?
They're okay. The Niners take the edge, and then secondary-wise, the Niners take the edge,
Lions are
too.
okay. Lions are solid. Shout out Jack Campbell, but,
Shout out
Fred
Alex
Greenlaw's
Anzalone.
different.
It is different, and so that's a big difference to me. But the reason that the Lions can hang is because of that man, Ben Johnson, and how they just – it's awesome. I am so jealous of the Lions scheming and how they call game plans and how they just set everything up. It's a tenet of sports. You want to do something, so you make them bite on the fake. Oh, I need to get to the right side of the basket. I'm going to fake left because it's going to open up the right side. They're going to bite. Oh, I need to throw. I need to open up this drag route. I need to open up the passing game. We're going to run the ball. It's all about setting up. It's like fishing, man. It's setting the hook and getting that fish to bite and reeling them in and suckering them in. And there have been no 2 better coordinators this season than, in my opinion, Shanahan and Ben Johnson, dialing up key plays and setting up the offensive game plan so that you have these things to rely on late in games. The one play that I will point to from the Buccaneers game is at 3rd and short. Everybody and their mama thought that Jared Goff was going to hand that ball right up the middle between the tackles to David Montgomery. In 3rd-string tight end Brock Wright slips out, blocks for 3 seconds, slips out on that drag route. It's right there wide open. It's going to be who schemes better, in my opinion. who can draw up the better offensive game plan? These teams are so close in talent and caliber. And again, I give the edge to the Niners in talent-wise, but with Deebo Samuel potentially out, that's the battle that I am looking for. Who can out-scheme the other coordinator? And I don't think there's a better two in football. Maybe you could go Andy Reid, maybe, but I think Mahomes is a big component of that. When you're talking about Jared Goff and Brock Purdy being elevated to these levels, I think Shanahan and I think Ben Johnson are the two best in football. That's the matchup that I'm looking forward to the most, man, is the chess match, the mind games, the offensive game plan from these two teams, man. There's been no two better teams in football at it this year, in my opinion.
So Deebo is actually back in practice.
Okay, that's huge.
Presume that he will play. I think you're right, though. Coaching is a big factor in this game in a way that in most you probably wouldn't look at it as like a top key, just because these are two coaches who really, really elevate their offenses. Of course, they have really good talent to work with in the skill positions and in the trenches, but they elevate their quarterbacks. They're very creative. And we saw Kyle Shanahan, who I think is a great, great offensive coach, kind of force the Niners to come back last week, partly because of his decision-making, his clock management, his play calling early. So I do think that matters. The biggest key to me is whether or not the Detroit Lions can disrupt what the Niners want to do offensively, and specifically disrupt Brock Purdy. They do two things very well on defense, and they are both totally about that front. They get pressure, and they stop the run. And the Niners obviously want to run the football a lot, and Brock Purdy under pressure, things can get a little bit dicey. Overall, though, I think this defense is still outmatched by just a loaded Niners offense. Over their last 11 games, more than half the season for the Lions, they are allowing 25 points per game, 379 yards per game. And I'm scared for the secondary because the Niners hit on explosive plays, dude. Ayuk will get open downfield in a flash. George Kittle will make those dudes miss, and he will get you 20 extra yards after the catch. And maybe this is a game where Aiden Hutchinson breaks through, has a strip sack, or they're able to get enough pressure to where Brock forces one ball that he shouldn't. It could be a 1-turnover Brock game. It's probably not a 3-turnover rattled Brock game. And I think even if you do get a big play on him defensively, he's going to give you a few big plays back because of the weakness of that secondary. And the conditions are a lot better than last week. It's going to be nice weather in San Francisco, and we've seen that Brock struggles a bit in the rain with ball security. And overall, he just looked uncomfortable last week in the pocket. He was missing throws. Cleveland game, bad conditions. He really struggled. But at the end of the day, to beat the Niners, you have to disrupt Brock Purdy. You have to expose him as an imperfect quarterback, as a guy who, when things are humming for this offense, can play near perfect football, which he has this year. In their wins, he is 28 touchdowns to 2 picks. This was through the regular season, over 10 yards per attempt. In their losses, 3 touchdowns to 9 picks, less efficient, less total yardage. So if you're going to beat them, that's just how you have to do it. And ultimately, I think this Lions defense has been shoddy enough to where I don't believe that they're going to do that.
I don't believe they're going to do it either. I want to be clear about that. But I think Aaron Glenn has the scheme and the personnel to dial up plays that disrupt Purdy. The specific plays I'm talking about, I was astounded at Aaron Glenn's ability to dial up defensive back blitzes on Baker Mayfield all game long. And that's what I'm talking about with, we can get into these overarching details. The things that change games on the play-to-play basis are adjustments and disguising stuff. In a basketball game, even as something as little as this, is switching 2 players because you like a matchup, because you think this guy defends better and this guy is going to crash the boards. In a football game, you line up the same way all game long, except this time, instead of the cornerback dropping into a hook flat, to a hook zone, whatever it is, he blitzes. Baker, there were 4 or 5 different plays and Baker handled the pressure immensely well. He got the ball out fast. He took the licks when he needed to, because that's the danger of defensive back blitzes, is when you don't see him coming off of the edge, you don't see him pre-snap, so it's a blind spot for you. He's not an edge guy, so you're not going, I need to be ready. I need to be ready for him. You're not even looking at him. The danger of those is when he can poke a ball loose and force a turnover, when you never see him coming. Baker dealt with that really well. Baker's also very experienced. Something that I think that is getting lost in the shuffle here is that Baker's just played a lot of football.
Yeah.
Baker's gotten better over the past. He was already a good quarterback when he came to the league. I've always thought. I know a lot of people haven't. Baker's improved. Brock is a young guy, and I'm not knocking Brock. I think Brock is very composed. I think Brock really reads the field well. I know that we've knocked on Brock a lot. There are things that Brock does exceptionally well.
Yeah.
But if Aaron Glenn can dial up a few of those timely defensive back blitzes, again, not every play, but a few, I think that's enough where it could swing the game. I'm not going to predict it, but I know Aaron Glenn has that in his bag, and I think that is an X factor for this Detroit Lions defense.
Yeah, I can see that, and I thought that he did a very good job as well. And by the way, well, I guess this isn't going to happen anymore because there's only 2 head coaching jobs left. It's not impossible. Aaron Glenn is a bit of a hot head coaching candidate. Could you imagine if the Lions lost both coordinators? And then we'll really see what Dan Campbell's made of. That's tough. Yeah. Look at how it changed public opinion of Nick Sirianni. But I do think that could be a factor. At the same time,
it's overwhelming, man.
I worry about the Niners being ready for that. I worry about the Niners having counters, being able to get some real explosive plays. And just broadly on Brock Purdy, I want to say, because you mentioned him being young, I've seen a lot of outrage about Brock Purdy criticism, and a lot of people just saying like, hey man, he's Mr. Irrelevant. It's incredible that he's here. That to me is a given. He's by far the best Mr.
So
Irrelevant
what? We
that
should
we've ever
hold
seen.
him. We should hold him to a different standard than other QBs?
Exactly. Or he's a second-year quarterback. He's a damn good second-year quarterback.
Yeah.
For Mr. Irrelevant, he is unprecedentedly good. He is being held to the standard of the quarterback of the NFC favorite, of the quarterback of arguably the best offense in football this year, of a guy who put up MVP caliber numbers. To me, I think there's been a middle ground with Brock all year, but it's just clear that it's like you can't treat him like a kid with training wheels when he is playing on such a great team, putting up such great numbers, and some people are elevating him to the MVP elite top 5 quarterback standard.
See, that's what you don't understand, Carson. Because he was the last pick in the draft, we should only compare him to like Chandler Harnish and Chad Kelly.
He's
Other
a lot
Mr.
better than
Irrelevance.
those guys. No, he's a lot better than those guys, Logan. There's no doubt about that. And at the end of the day, I do think this is a matchup where an off day from either of these quarterbacks could swing things. These are 2 of the more polar, volatile quarterbacks in the NFL this season. I mentioned the insane difference in splits between Brock Purdy in his wins and in his losses. Good Jared Goff, Jared God, we'll call him, versus Jared Goof has also been quite the up and down experience, in particularly just with taking care of the football. In 5 losses, he has 10 turnovers. In 14 wins, he has 6 turnovers. He can literally go from being one of the best in the NFL at protecting the football, like he was throughout last year and through the first half of this year and has been over the last couple weeks, to one of the most turnover-prone quarterbacks in the NFL. So who do you trust more just overall in this matchup at the quarterback position?
I do trust Brock Purdy more. And
Okay.
I can't shake the Jared Goof element, the bozo gene, the dark cloud that looms with Jared Goof. Now, I am rooting for the Detroit Lions. I'm rooting for my buddy Angelo finally seeing his team get to the promised land. The Lions have been long and suffering. That's where my dog is in the fight. But that's the one element, is that I just can't shake that I always feel like there is a turnover looming. Even against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you could have felt that way about Baker Mayfield. And you know what? He delivered. But I wasn't scared about Baker in the final drive. I probably should have been.
Yeah.
I was scared about Jared tossing one. I was waiting. And he had a couple. He had a pair in the end zone. I believe Jamel Dean dropped 2 picks that Jared Goff threw right to him. Not to mention, Jared Goff had that other play where he's under duress and he tosses it out to the tight end where he panics. I can't shake that, man.
But
it's
also,
like
think about how many balls Brock put in harm's way last week, because
that's
was a
fair.
lot.
That's very fair. It's the final component that it comes down for me is something that you mentioned a lot throughout the year with Jared, and that's the fact that he's not exceptionally mobile. And that's where I draw the line between the two guys. Is I think you're right. I can say that there's always one looming with Jared Goff. You can say that there's always one looming with Brock Purdy. You can have that feeling. So when both of the quarterbacks leave me with knots in my stomach, where I feel like the bad turnover play is always coming, what it comes down to is qualities and traits. Well, Brock Purdy, and Jared does this too. Brock throws with great anticipation. Brock reads the hell out of the field. I trust Brock to diagnose coverage and to throw with anticipation. He processes the game exceptionally well. He's also just more mobile than Jared Goff, and that matters to me. When Jared doesn't move a ton. He's rocked. He is right there in the pocket. He's not going anywhere. Yeah. And that's where I draw the line. And so it's very marginal between these two quarterbacks. I always feel like they are prone to that one bad play that feels like it's coming. I trust Brock Purdy just a little more. What about you, though? Are you rocking with Jared God, or are you expecting Jared Goof?
It's so close, dude.
It is.
It's so close. And legitimately, betting on either of these quarterbacks does scare the shit out of me. But betting against them, it's also like, they're liable to have a great game in any given week. I think Purdy does have the advantage in terms of mobility. And I think that when things are totally on schedule, he's been a bit more accurate overall this year. Although last week was scary. He was just off last week. Goff's advantage is the raw arm talent. Just the fact that he can make some throws that Brock can't. But I think as close as they may be, when you consider the situation, the truly special weapons that Brock is playing with, and that's not to diminish what they have in Detroit, but as we've talked about, a level of 4 studs on one offense that we've maybe never seen before. When you consider that context, I would expect Brock to probably put forth the better numbers in this game. I think it's probably a little bit less likely that he has that back-breaking mistake than Jared in this game when you also consider the defenses that they're facing. So really it is coming down to situational factors.
Yeah, exactly.
One-on-one, man, I think these dudes are in the same tier as quarterbacks. And one of them can absolutely blow this game. But going into it, I don't view that as like the decisive factor. I view it as the Niners are the better football team. And that's why I think the Niners are going to win this game. They're the better defense. As overall offenses, they're comparable because they're great in the trenches. They have great play calling. They have really good run games. But I think that the separator is the Niners' all-time skill position talent there. So I'm going Niners 31-24 in this game. I do think the Lions are going to put up points. I could see them scoring more than that. What's your prediction?
I think the Lions are going to put up points too, and while we're mentioning the great skill position talent of San Francisco, I do want to give a shout-out to the guys that have blossomed in Detroit. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Gibbs, Montgomery, Jameson Williams. I mean, the Lions also have a laundry list of performers with a great offensive line. That's why I think this game is going to be very close. I am picking the 49ers to win 27-25. I think this is a nail-biter.
Wow. Does Brock have to lead a big nuts drive?
No, I think it's going to be in Goff's court. I think the Niners are going to control.
And he throws a pick.
And I'm not going to pick. No, I'm not going to. Maybe. Probably.
Yeah. Dude, I love Jared Goff. I really do. A, went to the same high school as one of my best friends. B, went to Cal. C, all around really cool dude. Investor in Friday beers. I love the Almost Friday podcast. Went on the TMG podcast with Cody Cohen and Noel Miller. My favorite podcast. All around, very likable guy. Did the hilarious skit where he was undercover with whatever college team that was. Yeah. He's awesome.
Rides home with his dad after a playoff game.
He's awesome, dude. I love Jared Goff. He just had that hilarious press conference bit where the dude was like, something about, you guys have a lot of good players, and Jared said thank you, and then the guy was like, but maybe not considered superstars like the Niners guy, and then he said, all right, I take it back. I love Jared Goff, but God, he has had a lot of back-breaking moments in his career, so I think he's the best he's been, but I don't think it's enough to overcome a better all-around football team. Okay, before we get out of here, Logan, we've got some big news to talk about because the coaching hire spree has been going down in the National Football League. Now, a bunch of teams have picked their guy for the future, and there's only 2 vacancies left now in Washington and in Seattle. What was your favorite coaching hire that we saw recently, Logan?
Spree is right. I was really surprised that all of this happened so quickly. Again, teams with head coach openings cannot talk to coordinators or anything before their games are done, right? Like we can
No,
have.
they can actually.
Well, you can't actually hire a guy though. You can't do.
You
an
can't
official
hire
interview.
him, but like Ben Johnson's been interviewing.
It's strange to me that a lot of these teams would still pull the trigger with guys like Ben Johnson, McDonald, even like a guy like Bobby Slowick. I was expecting him to get an opportunity to go somewhere else. And again, maybe Bobby wants to stick with C.J. Stroud. Again, there are some coordinator jobs that I think are better than head coaching jobs. One, just fundamentally, you have the shield of the head coach, right? He's going to take the brunt of whatever happens. You're not the guy. That's a big responsibility. You know what I mean? You're the face of the franchise. If you're the OC, you get a shield and you also get one of the best young QBs. Anyway, it surprised me that so many guys flew off when there are so many guys available. So Vrabel's not hired. A lot of weird dynamics with this coaching carousel here. I know a lot of people are impartial to Jim Harbaugh, to the Los Angeles Chargers. Here's what I will say. I think it's going to be a success. I think this is a good hire. I like the fact that they have Harbaugh and that they have Herbert. Dean Spano still owns that team. And they are still the Los Angeles Chargers. And so I don't know why everybody is expecting. I mean, Carson, we are getting Super Bowl predictions after Harbaugh gets hired.
Yeah.
Guys, it's the Chargers. They play in the AFC West against Patrick Mahomes. What I'm saying is they can be as successful as hell. They can win a lot of games. They're not going to win the division. They're going to have to win 3 straight road games to get to a Super Bowl every year. And they're still the Chargers. So I don't know why we're ready to crown them. I think they win 9 games in their first year with Harbaugh.
Wow.
So
can we briefly just talk about the fact
let's do it.
that there's a bit of organizational incompetence throughout the AFC West because the Raiders immediately jumped at the opportunity to hire Tom Telesco, who it's not like he was a disaster, but it's like, really?
I mean, what did he do? Yeah.
He drafted some really good players, but some of the big free agency moves
whiffs.
didn't exactly pay off. That's some Raiders type shit, as they would say. But I love Harbaugh. Harbaugh actually is my pick, but I'll let you give your spiel first.
So I'm happy that Harbaugh is there. I think it's the right hire. I think it's the best guy they could have got. There is just I would say a bit of skepticism, a large amount of skepticism that comes with the Los Angeles Chargers. So I don't fully buy in. So I just want to give some honorable mentions here. I like Gerard Mayo to the Patriots. He understands the Patriot way. He's a defensive mind. And I think there is just some merit to this guy played the sport. This guy played defense. He can get people to buy into him. So, and I like Antonio Pierce. Same concept. Was with the Raiders. Did a phenomenal job as head coach. Guys like him. That's a factor that I like. When guys in the locker room are saying that they like you, that means something to me. Good. Football players like you. That's a great thing. My favorite hire, though, and I haven't heard many people talk about this hire, is Dave Canales to the Carolina Panthers. Now, I want to put an asterisk with this. I don't know if the Panthers are going to win a lot of games next year. I don't know if this is going to pay off immediately. 2, they've got an idiot as an owner. I think David Tepper is an idiot. I don't think he knows what he's doing. He's got a lot of money. He's also got a really fat ego. I think that David Tepper could blow this up. And I think he could screw all of it up because we've seen it with the Chargers. It starts with the owner. If the owner doesn't know what he's doing, it falls down. It is a trickle-down effect. Shout out Reaganomics, man. It's just a trickle-down effect where the entire organization gets boned. I think that is a factor. But what Dave Canales did in Tampa Bay, I think he can make the offense great. And I think he is the perfect hire for a young quarterback that needs guidance. The Buccaneers did not have a great offensive line. And so the fact that with a bad foundational piece of your offense, that they were able to have a great offense, it astounds me. They never got any push. They never had any protection for Baker, and yet they were able to succeed. Now, I think this is a different situation. You have a veteran quarterback. You have a lot of weapons. If the Panthers can get Bryce Young some weapons, man, a running back with good hands as a release valve, who is dynamic, a pair of receivers that are athletic, that you can get into space and scheme up one-on-one advantages, I think Canales can make life a lot easier on Bryce Young, and that has to be your focal point. You don't have a first-round pick in this year's draft. Bryce Young is your guy. There is no 180. There is no switch around. There's a new guy. Bryce Young is your guy for the next 5 to 10 years. And so every resource should be geared towards making him confident, making him ready, and putting pieces around him in place to make him successful. Dave Canales, to me, is the best foundational block that they could have given him. I was blown away with what he did in Tampa Bay, and I'm going to be honest with you. It scares me for what Tampa Bay is going to do next year without him. They needed Dave Canales. I think the Bucs could nosedive next year without Dave Canales. As much as I like Baker Mayfield, as much as I like Chris Godwin, as much as I like Mike Evans and Rachaad White, Dave Canales was a huge part of that Bucs offense, I think he immediately helps Bryce Young and makes this offense leagues better. It just surprised me. Not a lot of people in the media have been talking about Canales to the Panthers. That is one of my favorite underrated, under-the-radar moves of this offseason.
I think it's a good hire, and it goes beyond what he did with Baker this past year. The guy has been a quarterback whisperer. Russell Wilson's best seasons of his career, 2018 to 2020, came when Canales was the quarterback's coach, and then he was the passing game coordinator.
Geno's Pro Bowl year.
Geno, dude. They wrote him off. He did not write back, and then he exploded under Canales. This year, took a little bit of a step back, and then Baker has a career year. Like, the dude has consistently gotten elite results from quarterbacks. And by the way, even as Russ took a step back in 2021 when Canales was there leading the passing game, look at what Russ could have been. Look at what he was the next year in Denver. Look at what he was this year getting benched. Like, he was still making the most out of him. So I do like that hire. I'm always going to be a fan of going with a young offensive mind if that guy is really proven and if that guy has really produced results. And I also think that Brian Callahan to the Titans is interesting. I think that he did a good job with a Bengals offense that this year was obviously having to overcome the Burrow absence, and he's had a lot of talent in years past, but I think that that's a solid hire. I would prefer Canales because Bryce just needs a guy. Bryce needs a dude who can help guide him through this transition. But my favorite coaching hire was Harbaugh.
That is something that I think gets kind of underrated and lost. We can kind of pin all of the blame on these young QBs, but it's like, for example, another Alabama quarterback. I don't think Mac Jones was a complete bum. Look at what Belichick did to support him. Like, I don't think Mac Jones was a great quarterback, but it's like when you take a young quarterback and you throw him to the wolves and you don't give him an offensive mind. Everybody, you know what I mean? It's just you're hanging him out to dry, and this is the best thing that I think David Tepper and the Panthers could have done for him. I'm ecstatic for Carolina. Finally, they do something right.
It's going to be great when they win 8 games this year and David Tepper says, why the hell aren't we in the playoffs?
Why didn't we win the Super Bowl?
That's going to be awesome. My favorite hire was Harbaugh, though, and the guy is just a winner of epic proportions. What an unbelievable resume he has. Started at San Diego, of course, then takes a 1-win Stanford team. 4 years later, they were a 1-loss team, top 5 in the country. Took a 6-win Niners team. Then they won 13 games his first year. Saved Alex Smith's career. Turned second-round pick Cap into a star who never had comparable success after Harbaugh. And, of course, there is a big complicating factor there, that being that the league blackballed him. But the 2 years after Harbaugh, still, he didn't look nearly the same. And maybe there was a novelty to the read option stuff that people just caught up with. But nevertheless, it's not like he had superstar quarterback talent, and yet they were consistently contending, winning 13 games and doing it with damn good offense. Goes to Michigan, which was in a historic slump for that program. They'd been a top 25 team twice in the last 7 years, coming off a 5-win season. They won 78% of their games while he was there and ended with a natty. Like, the dude is a cultural overhaul guy. He gets the most out of the quarterback position consistently. He is forward-thinking. He is innovative offensively. He hires the right people defensively. And by the way, I think that he's probably going to bring Jesse Minter with him from Michigan to be the defensive coordinator with the Chargers. And I think that that'll be a good move. And this is just a team that needs an overhaul, man. They need dramatic change. And I think that Harbaugh is the guy who can deliver that. And if anybody can overcome the negative juju and the Chargers curse, it's going to be him, because that's what he's done. He's taken bad situations and he's turned them into damn good situations. And now he has the one piece that he hasn't consistently had.
Yeah.
And that's a great quarterback. I mean, obviously, he had Andrew Luck at Stanford at the end, and J.J. McCarthy, good college quarterback. I think that he got the most out of him. But having a guy like Justin Herbert is special. And the Chargers have managed to mess up everything around him. Harbaugh historically has managed to overcome a limitation at the most important position. So I do think it's great. I don't know that he can singularly bump them up to like Super Bowl contender, in my opinion. But I definitely think we're going to see them in the playoffs next year. I think this is going to be an improved all-around team on both sides of the ball. And I'm just pumped, dude. I've loved this fit. I've been excited to see Harbaugh back in the league, and I think this is a big win for all parties involved. This is the best job for him to take because he gets Herbert.
100%. If there is anybody, Carson, you lay out a immaculate argument. If there is anybody that can exercise them demons in L.A., it is Mr. Harbaugh. Highest winning percentage in NFL history, man. I believe, I don't know, was it like 44-13-1? I'm gonna get Jamie on that.
No, it can't be quite that good.
19 maybe.
Well, let's think. That's got to be what it is because 64 games, 4 years. It's got to be 44-19-1 because they lost.
Wow, I mean, dude.
Year.
49-22-1 as an NFL coach, 133-52 as a college coach. I mean,
is that counting postseason? His NFL? Because he coached 4 years, so it should be 64 games. But that's probably counting postseason.
Yeah, I mean it's. Maybe we all should start rocking the same shirt and pants every day, man.
Dude, yes, it's a path to greatness. You don't have to spend time thinking, am I going to wear the Nerd Sesh hat or the Volume hat? I mean, to be fair, you and I actually do keep our wardrobes pretty consistent, but we need to take it to another level. We need to be khakis and polo every single day.
Cartoon character, man.
Literally, dude. It's tough in cartoons. I respect the consistency. I try to emulate it, but I need to go further in that direction. Mm-hmm. Okay, on the flip side of this, what was your least favorite coaching hire?
I want to be clear. I don't think there's been any egregiously bad coaching hires yet.
I agree.
I think they've all been very good. The one that I just wasn't as emphatically enthused about was Raheem Morris to the Atlanta Falcons. And I want to be clear about something. This has nothing to do with Raheem Morris. Anytime players endorse a coach, bam, you got me. If they stamp your approval, everybody who has ever talked about Raheem Morris has talked about him in a glowing light. He is a great mind. He is a great leader. He is a great leader of men. When you have that quality, I'm all for it. If you can lead a locker room and they buy into you, I'm for it. The only reason I say Raheem Morris is I just wanted that offensive guy.
Yeah.
Screw Arthur Smith. I don't know if that guy could get me to, I say this, get me to get out of bed, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
That guy doesn't really fire me up.
No.
So I'm glad they have a leader now, but I want a guy who's also going to maximize the offensive talent that is here. Again, the Atlanta Falcons have invested so much draft capital into their offense. If you're talking about the offensive line, which I think is one of the best in the NFL. If you were talking about Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, there are still two glaring pieces that are very important to the offensive components. That is quarterback and offensive coordinator. They are still out of the woods in that one, and they have not found their guy. And until they do that, can I buy into the Atlanta Falcons? No, I can't. The Atlanta Falcons, last year, this season, were one of the most talented rosters in the National Football League. They had a lot of people saying they're going to win 10 games, they're going to win 11 games, they're going to win 12 games. They are overwhelmingly talented. Yes, that is still true. And I think next season, with the guys they have under contract, the pieces they have drafted, the guys they have in place, this is going to be one of the most talented rosters in football. But you need an offensive coordinator, and you need a quarterback that is going to elevate all of this talent and put them over the top. Like, I would pick the Falcons to win the NFC South next season if they get those pieces. Think about it. The Panthers have Canales, and I like that hire a lot, and I think they're going to improve a lot next year. They're not going to win the division. The New Orleans Saints are in cap hell, have Derek Carr as their starting quarterback. Boo, you're out of the picture. Tampa Bay Buccaneers lose Dave Canales. I love Baker Mayfield. He is my darling baby boy. I'm kind of counting them out next year because Canales to me was the biggest part of why they were successful. So goodbye, Tampa Bay. That leaves Atlanta right there. This is their division to seize. And I think they can do it with Raheem. It's just, I want that offensive guy and I want that quarterback. And until they get those pieces, I can't put my full confidence into the team.
Yeah. I agree. I think that Raheem Morris is my least favorite. I also agree, though, that it's not like I've really looked at any of these decisions and been like, what the hell? And also, unless you've been a head coach before, which Raheem Morris has, but it was 15 years ago. It was a long time ago. I wasn't dialed into what was going on in 2009 and 2011 with Raheem Morris and the boys. I'm generally not gonna like crush a head coaching hire because it's kind of like, on what basis? Like, we kind of got to see, can you do the job? If you've consistently sucked at the job, right? If you hire Josh McDaniels, I'm going to say that's stupid. Don't hire Josh McDaniels. But I can't shred Raheem Morris. It is, to me, just a question of the other options that were out there. Belichick was the favorite, but Ben Johnson has always been my favorite for them because I will say, I just think Ben Johnson is the best play caller out there.
Yeah.
So I talk about how I'm good with Brian Callahan to the Titans, but also it's like, well, I would have preferred Ben Johnson. So you can kind of apply that standard to a lot of these teams, but specifically with the Falcons, you feel like this is a team oozing with offensive talent. They are getting none of it basically to actually materialize at the level that you want. And here's a guy who's not just a great play caller. He has built this offense based on dominance in the trenches, run first football, and then creative passing off of that. Man. That's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. They want to run the football down your throat and then have a quarterback who, right, can attack in spots and be efficient. And that's what Ben Johnson has done so brilliantly in Detroit. So I just loved that for them. And Raheem, I believe that players love him, and that absolutely matters. He hasn't really been associated with that many defenses that have been all that good. Even the Rams defense the Super Bowl year, they took a step back from the previous year despite being loaded in terms of talent. But he's familiar with the organization. He has the players factor. And versus Belichick, I think Bill would probably be a better defensive coach right now. But when you look at the totality of the picture, Bill is 71. Bill is going to want to do things exclusively his way. Offensively, at least Raheem Morris has been around a Sean McVay. He's younger, probably more with the times there, even though that's not really his domain. Bill, we've seen what he's done. Matt Patricia and Bill O'Brien, like, it's scary giving offensive control to Bill and his guys. So for the future, I get it also because it's like, what's Belichick going to do? He's going to stick around for 3 years. He's going to get the all-time wins record. He's going to prove that he could win the NFC South without Tom Brady, and then he's probably going to pack it up anyways. Raheem, if it hits, could be the guy for you. So I get it versus Belichick. Versus Ben Johnson, though, I think he's a better fit and a better coach. But what do you think happens with Bill Belichick now, Logan? Because he's still floating out there. And as I mentioned, there's 2 jobs left. Commanders, Seahawks. This was the one, Atlanta, that everybody had keyed in on for him.
I can't imagine that if he sits out this year that Belichick comes back next season. You know what I mean? I feel like if Bill is out of the door, he's gone.
Yeah.
It's tough because I completely understand why Atlanta wouldn't want to go with Belichick for a lot of the reasons you laid out, but also because of how he ran the Patriots dynasty like a dictator. One, the age is a factor, but 2, I think that's an important component is his stubbornness and his, total control. Bill wants to draft guys. Bill wants to run everything, and I think Bill has proven that, 1, I think that's kind of a hard way for your organization to buy in. And 2, do you really want to give total control of your organization to Bill at this age?
Yeah.
He hasn't shown that he can do offense. And so I wonder, I think Bill's got way too much pride and way too much experience to accept a job as a DC. And I think maybe that's I hate saying it like that because, again, Bill is the most accomplished guy ever. But I think that's probably the ideal role for Bill at this point because of, like what you said, Bill's not going to be around too long. So give him a great defense now and just let them coach them up. If Bill can put his ego aside and do that, I think that's the best case scenario for everybody. I don't think people want to give him a head coaching job because it's not going to last long. And I don't really think Seattle or Washington are great landing spots for him. That being said, it is strange, Carson. You think about the old quarterbacks that have ended, original tenures. It's strange that he's not going to get rehired. Bill Parcells got rehired. Marty Schottenheimer, at his old age, found a way to get to San Diego and was successful. Dick Vermeil famously takes a long break after coaching the Philadelphia Eagles, comes back and wins a Super Bowl with the Rams. So it's not like it's unprecedented that old coaches, don't get, hired. They really do, especially if you've been successful in previous situations. I think you were seeing a league mindset switch, though. We don't need this guy to build our culture up and to build our franchise up. We want to go younger. We want to go more offensively inclined. And Bill is on his way out. I think Bill, the best scenario for him is to find a defense that is very talented and be a defensive coordinator somewhere, but I don't see him accepting that role.
No. It would be awesome. That'd be the best fit because he's still a brilliant defensive coach, but offensively, he's behind the ball. And in terms of personnel decision-making, he has really slipped up over the last half decade. So that's the appeal to hiring him is fix our defense. And then hopefully you aren't trying to force your way into our front office and we have a good guy there. And hopefully we can pair you with a good offensive coordinator and then boom, problem solved. Bill Belichick is not going to be a defensive coordinator somewhere at 71, though. He's not going to go back to his 80s Giants days. Like, I just think that he's past that. The one job that I was holding out hope would open up was the Eagles' job, just because this Sirianni stuff is hilarious. Like, he's apparently going to be doing even less in terms of offensive involvement next year, so he's, like, literally just there for vibes to call timeouts.
Did you see that presser? That was one of the dumbest questions I've ever heard. If the offensive coordinator calls offensive plays and if the defensive coordinator does defense, what do you do, Nick? Dog.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay, that's obviously a little bit dumb. But it is also kind of funny that he had to answer that.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like,
what do you
had
do?
two great coordinators and you were great. And then those two coordinators left and you fell apart. Like, of course, there are dudes who are really good head coaches who don't handle play calling on either side of the ball. But I don't think that Sirianni is the best example of that being a successful model. But that job is not open. So if I were to pick between the two jobs, Washington and Seattle, I would say Seattle would be more fun because I think he could fix that defense. I think that there's talent there, and offensively they've been more productive, but there's just no way that the Seahawks would go from 72-year-old Pete Carroll to 71-year-old Bill Belichick. First of all, philosophically, I can't imagine that's what they want to do, and also that would just be so disrespectful to Pete. Like, you can't keep your job, but we're going to go with like one of your major rivals and contemporaries of the last decade and a half. So I don't think he's going to take a job, and I don't think he's going to go coordinate somewhere. But I wouldn't rule out him coming back after a year. I think he wants that record, man, and I think he still wants to be in football for at least a little bit longer.
That is the other scenario. The other scenario that I think could arise, the first scenario, like you mentioned, Bill waits a year, comes back in the next coaching cycle and gets hired. The second scenario is that a coach gets fired that we're not expecting to in the offseason. You know what I mean? I don't know who that guy is. And
at this point, I feel like it's too late.
I wouldn't anticipate anybody getting canned, but I don't know, man.
McCarthy's keeping his job. Sirianni's keeping his job. Those are the two bums.
I've heard some rumors that there could be potentially another coach getting fired and another job opening up. So I think there's a little bit of a potential, but I concur with you. I think Belichick sits out a season, and I think somebody swings on him next year.
Yeah. This is surprising to some extent. But at the same time, he had only really shown interest in one job, and he had only interviewed for one job in Atlanta, and a couple of the other best jobs, Dallas, Philly, didn't end up opening up. So it's kind of not shocking when you think about how all the things have played out. Like a few weeks ago, it felt like, oh yeah, Bill Belichick is going to be coaching somewhere this year. Mm-hmm. But the dominoes have just started and continue to fall in a way where now it's like, okay, Atlanta hires the different guy, and that's kind of it. We'll see. He could be hired by Washington or Seattle, but it doesn't seem likely. And I also agree with what you're saying. I think the whole league wants to get younger. They want to get more offensive. I mean, that much is clear. It's been clear. And Bill is going to want to do things his way or the highway. And the last couple years, the results haven't necessarily justified giving him that sort of control over your entire organization. I still think he'd be very good for anyone's defense, but the whole picture of it, he's not quite what he used to be. And the long-term upside, you're not getting 10 years out of Bill Belichick. So I understand it from that perspective. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here today, folks. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, the good news is there's always more Nerd Sesh content. TikTok at Nerd Sesh. Instagram is the same. Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. You can see all of our trivia there. Also clips from the show. And if you want to listen to the full show, which you just did. You can do it on YouTube with video, or you can listen to the podcast across audio platforms. If you want to join our Discord, that link is at the link tree across our social media bios. Lots of fun NFL, NBA, and other conversation in there. And you can check out our merch at thevolume.com. Logan's got the hat. We got the flags behind us. We've got shirts. We've got hoodies. Find all of that also at our link tree. And with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.